let's talk about JavaScript Booleans. Now, we've kind of looked at these already during this course, but I want to just show you some different ways and different thinking about what a Boolean value is. Now, when it came to the conditional logic chapter, we looked at things such as truthy and falsy values. Now, these both evaluate to what we call a Boolean, but we also have the option to create a Boolean value by ourselves. It could be that we're creating some kind of API and we want a default value to be perhaps true or perhaps false. So let's have a look at the keywords that matter, the true or false. There isn't any others. It's either true or it's either false. It's either on or off, true or false. Now, as we looked earlier in the conditional chapter, we did something such as if the condition was true, then we would progress to do something. So you can see how these things tie into the programming world, and we just want to show you the differences between the Boolean syntaxes, because again, like numbers and strings, we have the literal, this version, this is the Boolean literals, and we also have the function and the constructor syntax. So let's go ahead, because there isn't much more that we can learn. It's either true or it is false, and we know that we can get those values back from JavaScript by creating particular expressions. One thing that we quickly glanced at earlier was this Boolean keyword, and we looked at different falsy and different truthy values of what evaluated to a Boolean. Now, I wouldn't really recommend using Boolean in many places unless you need to perform a type conversion and coerce that type from perhaps a string where we want to see perhaps if something is empty. Now, if you are perhaps inside a function, we might have some kind of argument that is coming through and we want to explicitly pass it into this Boolean object. Now you can see by default an empty string evaluates absolutely to false. Now even if we add a random letter, we'll pick X, this then gives us true because a string with contents inside evaluates to true. So using this Boolean function, we know how to get a true representation of how our JavaScript value will evaluate. And by evaluate, I mean exactly like this. So where this is evaluated, it's basically going to call Boolean around this value, and then if it results in true or false, it will then let us through. So this is a good debugging technique that we can use to see whether something will evaluate to true or false. Now earlier I also showed you a different technique where we did something like this, the double bang or the exclamation. Now this is a short and sweet way, which is easier to type out than passing arg into a function of Boolean every single time. But using this approach, it has no drawbacks that I'm aware of, but it also casts whatever we put after it into a Boolean, so we know whether it's going to pass a test in a particular conditional. Earlier, we also looked at passing things such as an array. An empty array is in fact a truthy value. An empty object, similarly, is also a truthy value, which will evaluate to true as well. Now, also like numbers and strings, we can also call new Boolean, which gives us that wrapper object around the value. So here I'm just going to say that we want to pass in arg. Now, over here in the Chrome DevTools, we can expand our Boolean object, and we can see this prototype is off of a Boolean, and the primitive value is now true. So you can see that it's definitely going to give us some kind of Boolean value back based on whatever we pass into it. And that's pretty much all there is to know about Booleans. It's either true, it's either false. JavaScript has truthy and falsy values. When we want to evaluate them, it can be sensible to check using the Boolean function or the double bang approach. And we also have had a look at the new Boolean instance, which gives us a bit more information about the prototype and where it came from, and the primitive value that exists inside of this wrapper object. And similarly to numbers and strings, this isn't something that we would want to use at all. If I'm being honest, this new Boolean, there's not really any reason to use it directly.